Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this final live stream. So we have several locations where we're streaming now. We are on YouTube, we are on Discord, and we are on Facebook. So to everyone who is joining or who is listening, welcome. A special note to those who are on Discord: if you're on Discord listening in the event stage, you might want to go to YouTube as well, because there you can see the PowerPoint and you can see the information that I'm sharing. So that might be something you want to do. But for others on Facebook or on YouTube, hopefully you can see the PowerPoint and you can watch along. So today I'm going to be talking about how you can talk about the future in English. So I'm just going to check quickly whether everything is working, and then we can get started. Right. So, today we're going to cover several topics. And the first topics that we're going to discuss are: which tense is it? Which means that I'm going to show you some tenses, and then we're going to have a look which tenses they are. Then we're going to talk about the future regarding certainty. And finally, we'll go over all of these future tenses and cover them in a certain detail. Now, some things are a bit kind of things that we've already discussed, so you might want to refer to other and previous live streams when we're covering those topics. So, if everyone is ready, I am ready, and let's get to it. Let's get started. So, oh yeah, of course, I always forget to mention this. Before we get started and before we move on, you can always download my tenses overview, which you can use while you're following along, and you can fill it in as we go. And I also have a future tenses overview in which I basically cover everything that I'm discussing in today's lecture. So if you want an overview of everything I'm discussing, I'm going to discuss, or I will discuss, the difference later today, then download this future tenses overview so that you know everything. You can print and put it somewhere in your room or somewhere around your house. So for now, let's get started with the what tense is it, or which tense is it. And of course, everything is downloadable from the link in the description. So, which tense is it? Here is is a text from the BBC, and the question is, which tense is it? Which tense is highlighted? So these can be all of the tenses we've discussed until now. So it can be present simple to present continuous to present perfect and present perfect continuous, and including all the past tenses related to these different verb tenses. So we'll start at the beginning, and we'll start with R. I need to change the color of the pen, and I'll make it white. So Manchester City are in an emergency with just 14 or 15 senior players for Wednesday's Premier League trip to Aston Villa, says boss Pep Guardiola. So we have are, which is present simple. And we have says, which is also present simple. And both are general present instances. So present simple is used here because it's kind of a fact, and this is something that's, a general instance as well. Barcelona target Ferran Torres misses out with a foot problem, while defender Aymeric Laporte is suspended. And both issues are also present simple. And this one is present simple passive. This is a passive sentence because he cannot suspend himself. So this is suspended because he cannot suspend himself, which means that we need to have a passive use of present simple here. Jack Grealish, who joined City from Villa for £100 million in the summer, are doubts because it's combined with Phil Foden. Joined is past simple because it happened in the past. And we know this because we have an expression of finish time or a time marker, in this case, in the summer. Are present simple because it's a general fact. And even if they are past fit, the past fit, they are past fit by someone else. So this is also a present simple passive sentence. Again, because it's a general fact and it's kind of in the present. Guardiola says the pair cannot play a lot of minutes. Coming into the busiest time of the season, when 9 Premier League games are crammed into 6 weeks, Guardiola is concerned. We have are crammed here because it's present simple passive. It is crammed by someone else, so there is no subject that can be the agent. So present simple passive. And is concerned is also present simple. Of the chunk to be concerned. He is concerned. Right. So we have lots of present simple in this sentence, in this text. And some instances of passive and some instances of past simple. So I got the question on Discord. If you're on Discord listening now in the events stage, you could consider going to YouTube to have a look at the PowerPoint with my notes and the PDFs you can download from the description. Okay. We can now move on to, this is of course the source, Manchester City. Pep Guardiola says the club face player emergency. So let's have a quick overview of all the present tenses and afterwards the past tenses as well. So we discussed in the first live stream present simple, present continuous, present perfect and present perfect continuous. I live near the city centre. She is eating a sandwich. We have seen this movie before and they have been speaking for hours. Very simple but clear sentences. We use present simple for facts, opinions and vivid storytelling. Now these things I mention here are not the only cases. I just took the most important ones to indicate kind of how they are used in general. There might be instances in which they are used differently, but these instances are only the most basic and most general options. Present continuous is used for things that are happening now, for gradual developments over time and for irritation. Present perfect is something that started in the past and with present influence. We also use present perfect for news or things that have just happened. Then we have present perfect continuous, which is kind of the same as present perfect, but then with an emphasis on duration. So as I mentioned, and as I will mention several times in today's lecture, is that when we use continuous, we put emphasis on duration. The same for the past tenses, a quick overview of all the past tenses. We have past simple, past continuous, past perfect, and past perfect continuous. Past simple, I lived near the city centre last year. She was eating a sandwich when the phone rang. We hadn't seen this movie before and they had been speaking for hours. So it was again very clear and simple sentences. We use past simple when something is in the past, it's over and we have an expression of finished time. So EOFT is expression of finished time, which is something like yesterday or this morning or last summer. We use past continuous for a longer period in the past. So when something had been going on for a longer period in the past, we used past continuous. As we can see in this example as well, he was eating a sandwich was a thing that was going on for a longer period in the time. And it was kind of interrupted, if you like, by the phone that rang. Then we get past perfect, which is used when something happened before something else in the past. So if you want to put emphasis on the order of events, we use past perfect. And finally, we have past perfect continuous. I moved on to it quickly, which is the same. We want to put emphasis on duration. We want to talk about that something went on longer, but then for something that happened before something else in the past. Right, let's move on to the 4 ways, or kind of the older ways, to talk about the future in English. So there are several ways we can do this, and we have the 4 future instances: future simple, future continuous, future perfect, and future perfect continuous. And we also have 3 other ways to talk about the future, which are to be going to, present continuous, and present simple, which is weird because I just mentioned that we use present continuous and present simple in the present. Why would we also use them in the future? Well, we're going to look at that later on. Here are some examples of sentences. I will leave school in a few hours. She will be having dinner in a few hours. We will have seen a lot of money if this breaks through. This should have been, we will have earned a lot of money if this breaks through. Future perfect continuous, we will have been sleeping for hours. To be going to, I am going to buy a new phone next week. Present continuous, I am eating pizza tonight. And present simple, the train leaves at 12. So as you might see from these sentences, the tense we use has something to do with how likely something is going to happen, which you might also recognize from modal verbs. Let's focus on 4 main ways to talk about the future, and I'll explain what I mean with the idea that something is certain, yes or no. So I'll comment on the certainty issue later on. So in general, we can distinguish between the 4 ways depending on the level of certainty related to the event. So when we talk about the future in English, to be certain or certainty is important, and certainty means that how likely is something to happen. Right? The more likely it is, the more certain it is, and the least certain it is, the least likely it is to happen. So things that are less likely we'll put at the 0% certainty, and things that are definitely going to happen, are definitely certain that it will happen, we'll put at the 100% certainty level. Here we have our 4 different ways: future simple, present simple, to be going to, and present continuous. And we now need to put them on this scale. So where do they appear regarding certainty? Think about this for a second. Where would you put this on this scale? So the first thing that we'll do is put the thing that is the most certain at near 100%, and it's kind of 100%ish. Then we get present continuous. So present simple is the most certainty, and then we get present continuous. We have to be going to, which is follows present continuous, and the least certain thing to happen is indicated with future simple. So if we have very little certainty that something will happen, we use future simple, and it increases as the level of certainty increases. We use a different tense as well. So I will leave soon is not very certain, and we are leaving at 7 is more certain than I am probably going to leave, and I've indicated with the word probably as well. This also indicates that we're not very certain that something is going to happen. And then I leave at 7 is probably very certain. It's very likely that I'm going to leave at 7, that I leave at 7. And you kind of notice how I use these tenses interchangeably, that it's not set in stone, but we'll look at that later on as well. So it's kind of, what do you want? It's not that simple. Even though the future simple is simple, but it's not that simple to talk about the future. For the people who've joined recently, welcome, and I hope, again, if you're listening on Discord, you should go to YouTube, but if you're on Facebook or on YouTube, you can watch along. So let's look at all the differences before we move on. We have future simple, which is used for things that aren't very certain, when we want to give information about the future, when we're making predictions, when we talk about spontaneous decisions, promises, refusals, when we're making suggestions, and when offering a service. An example of a future simple sentence is, I will get it. On the other end of the spectrum, we get present simple. And present simple is used for things that are very certain, for things that are going to happen, no doubt. Why? Because we use present simple for scheduled events. So, the train leaves at 2. Does the train leave at 2? And the train doesn't leave, because the rest is the same. So it follows the other present simple structures and other present simple rules. But we use present simple in the future when we want to talk about things that are scheduled. That's why it's very likely that it will happen. Then we get present continuous, and as you can see, this is a bit longer than the present simple and future simple instances. So we use present continuous for arrangements or fixed plans in the near future when a date and time have been set. This is important. So when a date or time has been set, we use present continuous. We also use present continuous when we have verbs of movement to talk about actions that are just starting. And this is very specific, so watch along with this example. They are flying to Curacao next week. We use present continuous because it's an arrangement or a plan in the near future. And we have a date and time, kind of. Right? We have a date, it's somewhere next week, and the time is regular because it's scheduled, it's a flight. Now this is an example of the second instance of present continuous for the future. Put your shoes on, I'm taking you shopping. So imagine that you're sitting with someone and this person might be a bit depressed or might be a bit sad because they had a hard day at work, and you want to do something fun for these people. So what you do is you say, well, put your shoes on, I'm taking you shopping. Again, it's not something that's happening now, you're not shopping as we speak, and he's not literally taking you, but it's something that's in the near future, and because it's in the near future, we use present continuous. And finally, we get to be going to. And we use to be going to for things that are planned. So things that are expected and are on the way. We also use it for things that have evidence. So, here we have, I am going to get my new car next week. That's something that's planned. When are you going to cut my hair? Which is kind of expected and it's on the way-ish. So you've asked someone whether they can cut your hair and you want to know when this is going to happen. When are you going to do this? Finally, we have Paul and Julia are going to have another baby, and of course there's evidence of this. This person is pregnant. Then again, future simple, which is used for things that are not so certain and for giving information, predictions, spontaneous decisions, promises, refusals, making suggestions, and offering a service. So these are the main 4 ways we can talk about the future in English. And as you can see, this is very elaborate and of course very specific. Not all of them can be used interchangeably. But what is very important, in many situations you definitely can use 2 or more of these with similar meanings. Again, there's no one in the world who's going to say, well, you used to be going to, so I didn't know you were very certain or you weren't that certain about this or this going to happen. Depending on the context and the person you're speaking to, the future tense you use might be still correct. Let's start with the first one. I'm going to cover all of them, but I'm not going to cover present continuous and present simple. If you want to know more about present simple or present continuous, have a look at my 3-minute grammar videos in which I explain present simple in 3 minutes and present continuous in 3 minutes. I also mentioned the use of them in the future, so that makes a good link to what we're discussing now. But let's start with to be going to. So we make to be going to in affirmative sense with a form of to be plus going to plus the infinitive. And as you obviously know, to be is I am, you are, he is, it's also she is and it is, we are, you are, and they are. Then, for questions, we get inversion. Remember from previous weeks when we have inversion when we talk about questions? Well, the same happens with to be going to. We get to be plus the subject of the sentence plus going to plus the infinitive. Then, for negations, we get to be plus not plus going to plus the infinitive. Here's an example of both an affirmative, a question, and a negation. So the affirmative sentence is, I am going to get my new car next week. It might look something like this. Question, am I going to get my car next week? And for the negation, I am not going to get my car next week. And you can see the inversion with the question. And you can see the not for the negation. So, I am going to get my car gets inversion and the not for the negation. And you can see all the elements. To be plus going plus going to plus infinitive. So, future simple. As I mentioned, we use future simple for things that aren't certain, when we want to give information about the future, predictions, spontaneous decisions, promises, refusals, making suggestions, and offering a service. Here are some examples of future simple. It will be cold this winter. Will be. We use future simple in the sentence because I'm kind of doing a prediction. I'm also giving some information about the future. We don't know whether I'm predicting whether this is going to happen. It might be the case that I'm simply giving some information. It's also kind of related to the fact that things aren't certain, because if I say it will be cold this winter, I don't know for sure whether this is the case. So it could be that it's not going to be cold, but I think it's going to be cold. Another example is when the doorbell rings and I'll get up and say, I'll get it. We use future simple here because this is a spontaneous decision. Right, so I just spontaneously decided, well, I'll go and get the door. I'll open the door. We also use future simple for the promises. So something like this: I will do anything for love. And then the refusal is, I won't do that. As we can see in this very popular Meatloaf song. So these are very good examples of future simple use. And as you kind of already noticed when I was talking about the first one, the things are of course not very separate. It's not that, things are uncertain is not related to making predictions, because predictions are never really certain, right? No one knows the exact future. And here we have a suggestion or offering a service. Shall I cook tonight? Then we're making a suggestion, or I'm offering a service. And I also use future simple. Now you probably thought, how do I make future simple? Because, as you might have seen on the previous slide, we also have something called shall. So, we make future simple with will or shall plus the infinitive. And I'll talk about the difference between will or shall in the next slide, or one of the upcoming slides. It's made by a combination of will and shall plus the infinitive. And the infinitive is also called the main verb. So when something is the infinitive, we can also call it the main verb. She will be there is an example. They will leave in a few hours is also an example. And of course, we have Senor Chang here from the very popular TV series Community, who says, I will allow it, which is a spontaneous decision, right? So when do we use will and when do we use shall? Which is of course a very interesting question. Usually we can say that we can use both of them. So you can use will or shall interchangeably. But there are some exceptions. When you talk about the willingness or the wish to do something, you use will. So in this case, I will call her tonight for sure. This is my willingness, my wish that I'm going to do this. It's definitely something that I'm planning to do. So I will call her tonight for sure. When we talk about obligations, like you shall not pass or you shall go to bed at 8, we use shall. So we can't use will here. You will not pass. Well, of course, then you can, but then you're refusing something. You're refusing someone entrance. In this case, it's an obligation in the negated form. When we talk about decisions, we use will. So he will buy your Christmas present. That is a decision. Someone has decided that this person would do that, so we use will. And then when we talk about promises, we also use will. So I will buy you a new one. It's a promise. I've probably broken someone's phone or tipped over someone's laptop from the school desk. Then I will say, don't worry, I will buy you a new one. And in British English, you can also use shall in this case. I shall buy you a new one. Then we don't use will or shall, or we kind of do use will in this case, for refusals. But then will not becomes won't. So you can use will not, of course, which is more common in formal English. But in informal English, you can use won't. I won't do that. So in general, we can use either will or shall, but there are some exceptions to this rule. Regarding willingness, obligation, decision, promises, and refusals. Finally, when we ask for instructions or decisions, we also use shall. So, shall I help you? And if you have a large language aptitude, you might think that the question, will I help you, sounds a bit weird in that context. Because if you would say, will I help you, it kind of sounds like you're doubting whether someone will help you. And that's of course not what you want to do when you want to give instructions or give a recommendation, or you want to help someone. The same is true for when we give instructions and orders. So when we give instructions and orders, we use will. So you say, will you be quiet, please? That's an instruction. And for instructions, we use will. Welcome to everyone who has joined halfway through. We are now at the point where we can discuss the rest of future simple. So future simple in affirmative sentences looks like this. She will hit you if you do that. And I have abbreviated or contracted a will to apostrophe and double L. She'll hit you if you do that. For questions, we get inversion. Will she hit you if you do that? And then for negations, we obviously get not, so we get she won't hit you if you do that. So what have we discussed until now? Well, we did present simple, we did present continuous, we did to be going to, and we did future simple. And there are still some things we need to discuss. So we still have future continuous, we still have future perfect, and we have future perfect continuous. And as you will notice, these are not very difficult. So we'll go over them rather quickly. But wait, there's more. Let's start with future continuous. So if you remember from both previous, from last week and the week before that, every time we talk about continuous, we talk about duration. Excellent. So continuous is usually used when we want to put emphasis on the duration of something. So That's the case as well when we look at the future. Future continuous is used for actions in progress at a specific time in the future. Now this might sound a bit weird, so let's look at this in a bit more detail. Imagine we have a timeline, and we have the present, of course, and there's no past in this issue, so everything is in the present. And this is the moment when I'm talking to someone and he or she says, so what are your plans for tomorrow? I'm probably on holiday somewhere, and I want to go home. So we're reflecting on somewhere in the future. And I say, well, tomorrow at around this time, I will be flying home. So this moment in the future, I am flying home. And this might look something like this. Other instances in which we use future continuous are for actions which may have a result. So they will be eating together, so they might be late. We have two people eating together and they might be late. We also use it for an action which may make another action possible or necessary. So, she will be seeing her dentist then, so we need to reschedule. Because this is happening, we need to reschedule our appointment. It requires a particular action. And finally, we use future continuous for asking polite questions about personal plans and arrangement. Will you be coming tonight? You can say, are you coming tonight? But will you be coming is just slightly more formal. And slightly more polite, if you like. I see people in the chat writing things down. That is excellent, because everything is, of course, very important. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been in the PowerPoint. Even flying dogs are important. Dogs over cats, right? How do we make future continuous? Remember, we use will or shall. That's the basis of all the future tenses. And we use be plus the present participle. Now, if you kind of have a sharp eye, you might recognize this from present continuous, which is also to be plus present participle. So we combine it with will, and be always remains the same. So we don't use be, we don't change be even in other instances. So it's always I will plus be plus verb plus ing. So even if you have he, she, it, we don't have extra s here, so there's no extra s. And we don't need to change be into something else. So it's always he, she, it will be plus verb plus ing. The same goes for we, you, and they. We don't need to change be into are. It remains the same for be. I see in the chat one of my old class students is joining. Welcome. So, future continuous, will plus be plus present participle. Another example, set of examples with future continuous. I will be flying home tomorrow. For questions, remember we get inversion for questions. So, will I be flying home tomorrow? I need a question mark because it's a question. And negations, I won't be flying home tomorrow. So affirmative sentences, I will be flying home tomorrow. Questions, will I be flying home tomorrow? And negations, I won't be flying home tomorrow. Next is the future perfect. And you might remember from the perfect things that we use present perfect when something started in the past and still influences the present. We use past perfect when something happened in the past before something else, so we're indicating a particular order. What do we do with future perfect? Well, we use future perfect for actions that are expected to be completed by a particular time in the future. So do you kind of see how completion plays a role with perfect? So when something is over before something else in the past, we use past perfect. When something influences the present but started in the past, we use present perfect. And when we expect something to be done in the future, we use future perfect. An example of future perfect is something like this. The teachers say they will have corrected our exams by tomorrow. Will have corrected our exams by tomorrow. So we expect that the teachers, tomorrow the exams will be done. So we expect that it's done by tomorrow. How does this work on a timeline? Well, this is us talking about it. When will they finish the exams? I don't know. Then someone else might say, well, they expect that they will have corrected the exams by tomorrow. So tomorrow comes, and we expect that we get our results here. So it must be done here in the future. Another example, we will probably have spent our November salaries on Christmas gifts before December starts. Well, good for us, the summer has started and we still have some of our November salaries left, hopefully. But imagine we're talking about this yesterday, and someone said, well, and we still have lots of time before December starts. Someone might say this: we will probably have spent our November salaries on Christmas gifts before December starts. So we expect something to be completed. The spending of money will be completed. We don't have any more money to spend when December starts. Then, how do we make future perfect? Well, we have will plus have plus the past participle. Remember the past participle? Verb plus ed, or its own form. So we have I, you, he, she, it, we, you, they, all get will. Same for the continuous, have remains the same. And then we have the verb plus ed and its own form. Of course, as always, there is a list of irregular verbs which you can find in the description. And that's, of course, the final row of that list is the past participle. Some examples. The teachers will have corrected our exams by tomorrow. That's an affirmative sentence. For questions, we get the inversion thing. So we get, will the teachers have corrected our exams by tomorrow? And for negations, we will get, the teachers won't have corrected our exams by tomorrow. Usually happens when we teachers kind of give a time frame, like, oh no, we will have done it by tomorrow, and then we weren't able to finish it because we also have lives and friends and hobbies and sports. So, if you're a teacher watching now, you probably recognize this from your own teaching practice. And then you get all the emails. Did you already correct my work? Have you already corrected this? Are you still working on it? So that's part of teaching. Right, here we have future perfect continuous. So it's kind of a combination of future perfect and future continuous. Again, if you remember from the continuous thing, it's always duration. Continuous focuses on duration. So, we use future perfect continuous for actions that will continue up to a particular event in the future. Again, continue, duration, it's longer. So, they will have been drinking for an hour when they are ready to go out. So, we have people and they are drinking, like Ross is doing here as well, his margaritas, a very good episode. So they're drinking, and then someone says, oh wow, how long have they been drinking? Or will they be drunk when they go out? Well, and then I might say, when they go out in the future, or they will have been drinking for an hour. This is a different example that has nothing to do with alcohol. And of course, don't drink if you're underage because drinking is bad for you. I will have been teaching for 10 years in 2026. We'll talk about something in the future. We're looking at 2026. I'm teaching now and I will probably still be teaching in 2026. So when I look back, or when I look in the future and then kind of look back at the time I've had as a teacher, I might say something like, I will be teaching for 10 years in 2026 because I'm still doing it. I expect that it will keep going on in the future. So if you look at the timeline, 2026, we're here now. I look at the future. I started in 2016, and by then I will have been teaching for 10 years. How do we make future continuous? Well, if you have a sharp eye, you probably would have seen this. We make it with will plus have plus been plus the past participle. So we have a very long verb phrase. Will plus have plus been plus past participle. So, I, you, he, she, it, we, you, they. Will combined with have, combined with been, and combined with present participle. And the present participle is the verb plus ing. So, from our examples, I will have been teaching. Some examples of future perfect continuous. The teachers will have been correcting exams for days. So, when we look at the future and we're discussing, well, why are they still correcting the exams? We might say something like, the teachers will have been correcting our exams for days. And honestly, this is how teachers feel when they're still correcting your exam. So never ask your teacher whether they're already done, because this is how we feel. Questions. Will the teachers have been correcting our exams for days? Again, we get inversion. Always with questions, inversion. Negations. The teachers won't have been correcting our exams for days. That's probably fake news, because if we feel like this, we will have been teaching your exams, correcting your exams for days. This is probably how you feel by now, especially if you're my student at the University of Applied Sciences. I will have been learning about tenses for hours. We've been talking about tenses for 7 weeks, and now we're talking about the parts of speech, so it's lots of grammar for hours on end. Questions. Will I have been learning about the tenses for hours? And negations. I won't have been learning about the tenses for hours. So the same goes here. For the questions we get inversion. We have will plus have plus been plus the present participle. Will have been learning. Now we're going to talk about something that is a bit more difficult, which is the future in the past. So here I have a timeline, and here I have some sentences. What we do when we talk about the future in the past, the future in the past, or we talk about the future in something was in the past, we have now, which is when we're talking, and we look back at the past. And at some point in the past, someone said something about the future. So in the present, we're looking back at the past, and we're reflecting on the moment when someone in the past said something about the future. So in this case, I would leave as soon as she had arrived. I would leave as soon as she had arrived. But I wasn't able to leave because she hadn't arrived or something else came up. For the future continuous, we would say I would be leaving soon. So in this case, someone would have said something like, someone said, in that moment when you're leaving, well, I will be leaving soon. But then someone said, something came up and nothing happened, and we're reflecting when we're in the present to that moment, and then I might say, I would be leaving soon. Same goes for future perfect. I would have corrected. Future perfect continuous. I would have been eating for hours. And to be going to, I was going to leave, but I didn't. So what you notice when you look at the future and the past, we change the will to its past equivalent. So will becomes would. For to be going to, we get was. And if you remember, we still have present simple and present continuous. And we can also use them in future and the past. So what happens with present continuous and present simple is we simply change them into their past equivalents. So present continuous becomes past continuous. So the past tense of I am going to leave is of course I was going to leave. And for present simple, I left for I leave. So again, this is how you use the future tenses, or kind of everything you can use to talk about the future in the past. And that is what we mean with future in the past, when we reflect on something that was said about something in the future. So here are some real world examples of future tenses. Now I've been looking for some examples over the internet for quite some time and I wasn't able to find any. So not anything that's very exciting. So I took two articles, one from the CNN and one from the BBC. And this is about something that's going on in the US as we speak, which is about the legalization or illegalization of abortion. But it has some very good future tenses. So we have lots of tenses. We have concluded, will now take, will sit, they will go, and of course we get some other instances. Then have described, are, what is going to matter, to be going to, very good, to be going to, will get, will take, and changed. So why do we use all these options? Well, here we have present perfect, because it's something that started in the past and probably influenced the present, or because it's news, it has just happened. And here we have future simple, will plus infinitive. Why? Because it's probably kind of an order of events, and it's sort of a prediction, right? Something has concluded and they will now take it into consideration. There's also giving information about the future. The same is for the second option, for the second instance of future. Will sit alone in the conference room. Also giving information. Future simple. They'll go in order, same, future simple, giving information. Have publicly described, present perfect. Probably because it's news. Are, present simple. Because it's a fact, they are often known going in. And what is going to matter, to be going to. And this is good to be going to because we it's not very has nothing to do with certainty. It's again giving information and something that's important. So it's kind of plays a role in everything. So it's kind of planned. The senior justice and majority and minority will get. We give information, and this is future simple. Same as for this case, will take, also future simple. And finally we have past simple, because this is something that happened in the past and is completely over. He changed his vote in 2012, an expression of finished time. Now, as you can see, we can use future simple in lots of cases here, but they could have used something else as well. So they could have said will get to choose, could have been something like are going to choose who writes the opinion. Makes same sense, right? Because at some point it's going to happen anyway. So they could have used are going to be going to instead of will. And it is the case for most of the other future tenses as well. Here's another example. This one is from the BBC and it's on Manchester United. Although he had no previous experience, of management, Carrick has not been scared to make big decisions. He described leaving Cristiano Ronaldo out of his starting lineup at Stamford Bridge as not a major decision, although it is anticipated the Portugal superstar will return against the Gunners, which are Arsenal. It is also fairly certain midfielder Fred will be retained. While many supporters have questioned the Brazilian, Carrick sees enormous ability in a player who occupies the same position he did in his own playing days. So which tenses do we have? First we have past simple. Then we have present perfect. And this is present perfect of to be scared. Then we have past simple. And then we get, although it is anticipated, past simple passive. This is passive because this is anticipated by someone else, so is anticipated and it's not done by it, right? It is not the agent here, so that's why we use a passive sentence. Will return, this is likely to happen. It could happen, it's not very sure, it's not certain. Hence the word anticipated. Is present simple. And the same is here, will be retained is future simple passive. And that's related to the same idea, right? We're not very certain that it will happen, but it is likely to happen, so we use future simple. Now this might be a case where using a different future tense or future instance, like to be going to or present continuous, might really influence the meaning of the sentence. Because if it was, it is also fairly certain midfielder Fred is going to be retained, or what else? Is retained, then it adds more certainty. Then we expect proof that this is going to happen. Whereas now, it's fairly certain, that also creates certainty, but then again we use future simple because it's not very certain. We don't know it for sure. So while many supporters have questioned present perfect, it started in the past, influences the present, right, up till now. Carrick sees it's a fact, so it's present simple. Who occupies, also a fact, present simple. And did, past simple. Because it's over, right? In his own playing days is our expression of finished time, so it's completely over. So just to summarize everything we've discussed now, we have future simple, to be going to, present continuous and present simple. And as you can see, we can kind of distinguish all of them based on how we use them. So if it's very certain, we use present simple. It's very likely, it's scheduled, so it's going to happen. Present continuous is something that's fixed with a near, in a near future, and we have a date and a time, a date and a time. Present continuous. Same for verbs of movement, to talk about actions that are just starting. To be going to is used for things that are planned, things that are expected or on the way, and things that have evidence. And then I think the things are on the way is also one of the reasons why we use present to be going to in the sentence of the judges who are going to sit together, right? It is expected, it usually happens, it's kind of habitual. So that's why we would use to be going to in that sentence, which is this sentence here. And then of course future simple for things that are uncertain when we're giving information about the future, predictions, spontaneous decisions, promises, refusals, making suggestions, and offering a service. And the same goes as well for all these tenses and all these different ways to talk about the future. In many situations we can use other options as well. The context is really dependent on what you're trying to say, and usually the context will help you. Especially in writing, I would say that using the correct future tense can have an influence, as I just showed you with the Fred example. But in spoken language, I don't think this is really the case. I think you can definitely use them interchangeably, although it's very important that you check with your listener whether they've understood what you're saying and what you're trying to say. So let's round off with one final question. When do you use to be going to, and when do you use present continuous? Do you want to put emphasis on an arrangement? Use present continuous. For example, I can't come over, I'm eating at my parents' tonight. Do you want to put emphasis on intention? Use to be going to. I am going to tell him that he is disturbing my classes soon. So I definitely have the intention to do this, but I just don't know why, when, or maybe I'm still a bit afraid or a bit hesitant, but I have the intention of doing it though. I have the intention. Emphasis on decision, used to be going to. So who's going to buy dinner? Right, we're putting emphasis on the fact that we do need a decision now. So who's going to buy dinner? Who's going to do this? So what have we done? We've looked at which tenses, we've looked at the text and we looked at the tenses. We talked about certainty and we talked about the order of kind of where you would put all these tenses related to the certainty. I gave you some examples of all the future tenses. We looked at all of them: future simple, future continuous, future perfect, and future perfect continuous. We didn't look at present simple, nor did we look at present continuous. But of course, as I mentioned, have a look at my 3-minute grammar videos if you want a quick overview of those. And I will put the links in the description. Then we looked at future in the past, and as a bonus, I answered when you use present continuous, when you use a present continuous, or when you use to be going to. And that's basically it when it comes to the future. Now don't forget, you can download my Talking About the Future in English overview, which is also in the link in the description, and you can download it from my Wakelets. You can use it when studying the future tenses, and it's a good overview of when we use all of them. And everything I discussed in this lecture today, you can find in that overview from the link in the description. And that's basically it. That's everything we had to do related to the tenses. We looked at present tenses, past tenses, and now the future tenses. But this doesn't mean that it's over. We don't need to say goodbye forever. If you're interested in reading The Help by Catherine Stockett in December 2021, make sure that you join our Discord, and the link is in the description as well. In a few weeks, I will have a new live stream and new classes starting for English for absolute beginners, and we'll start with making sentences. And then there will also be a stream on advanced English parsing, where we're going to look at parts of speech in very detailed situations, and we're going to look at all the names of all these words. For now, I would definitely thank you for watching these 3 weeks. I hope you've learned something, and don't forget, of course, to like, subscribe, and leave something in the comment section. And I definitely hope to see you in one of my next future live streams. Goodbye.